Hi, I'm Bonnie Burkert, and this is Truth Be Told, Transformation, bringing you tools for transformation to live your highest truth. What does that mean, your highest truth? Well, I think it's about really finding authenticity, and the way that one can do that, and certainly one of my best and favorite tools is yoga. Today, as you know, I've had a number of people that are great lovers of yoga and practitioners of yoga, teachers of yoga. I've had them on the show here. But today we've got a really special story, and I'm very excited to introduce Nkosi Grael. Hi, Nkosi.
Hey, how you doing, Bonnie?
Now's my chance to double check my pronunciation. How'd I do?
Excellent. Nkosi, perfect.
Namaste. So, Nkosi, you have a unique documentary that was brought to our attention, and we wanted you to come on and talk about it. It's called Nkosi As- Ascended. Sorry, did I
Eclipse.
Eclipsed? Nkosi Eclipsed, and it is the story of you when, as a teacher of yoga in prisons, while you yourself were an inmate. So let's start first with your practice of yoga and where you first learned that and how that started you, where that fell in your on your journey through this experience.
Good question. So as we all know, yoga means union. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be doing asanas or poses. It could just mean uniting your mind, your body, and your spirit in other ways through breathing, through meditation, so on and so forth. So my first experiences were as a child. As I stated in the documentary, I grew up. My mother raised me going to the ashram. So I guess you know a form of bhakti yoga would have been my first introduction to yoga as a child.
Let's explain to people that may not know. The Bhakti yoga is more devotional yoga, right? So was
It's
that in
the
the form of music, or what was that like for you? Just always kind of interesting to imagine what it's like for a young person to have that experience.
um Bhakti was more is more, yes, devotional kind of servitude towards your spiritual practice, towards what they call the Mahadeva or the Deva.
Hmm.
Um, Understanding the different attributes of the Deva, which are these like intermediate deities in between the supreme intelligence and man. Um, and how those energies can assist you in your everyday life.
Fantastic. Okay, so you were on that path, and then did it take a turn? Did you abandon your practice?
I I don't know if I abandoned my practice. That's again another good question. It was probably more like I expanded my practice outside of my practice, and I just got real curious about different schools of thought in the world. Um, Once I got into the prison system, I wanted to control my thoughts, my mind, uh, the incessant thinking, the frustrations of being there, the whole process that got me there. And it was almost like an escape for me. So that was how I ended up in the actual, doing yoga the way we know it in the West here.
Okay, so let's just take a moment here and talk about it. I don't want to go down the specifics, but I want to know. So you would say that yoga was always a part of your world. I mean, I guess I'm just kind of wondering, did you did you abandon your practice at some point that got you in the trouble that landed you in jail? I mean, or did you feel that? I mean, hey, listen, we all have a path, and there's a rocky road, and sometimes we're put to the test, right? Just to see how true we are to our practice. So I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit more about that, because that goes, there's a big step from devotional yoga, the knowledge of that as a kid, and then what ended up happening. So,
Good. Um, so no, actually, I would say I was still practicing yoga all through the process of what landed me in the prison system. It was a tax issue. And it wasn't because I didn't file my taxes. It was because I hired a tax preparer who was running a scheme on the government that we all found out about later. And I was asked to testify, and I didn't really know him that well. I figured, oh, it's just an interview the government is asking me for. I told them all these things, and they kind of flipped everything out of phase and made me to be something I'm not, and then I found myself fighting for my freedom.
unbelievable.
Um, so it wasn't. I don't think that I abandoned my the abandonment of my yoga practice uh, landed me in the prison system. I don't think that's what it
No,
was at all.
no, I don't. I obviously am just now, getting the details. And hey, listen, we all used accountants, so it's
Yeah,
like yikes. So wow, I mean, this becomes almost a fateful thing, doesn't it, Nkosi? I mean, do you ever
yeah.
look at it
It
that way?
absolutely like I never really, I was in the prison system for 2 years and 10 months, and most of the time while I was there, I was I had um, been of the mindset that this was part of my life path and that it was gonna make me better for whatever reason.
Wow.
It was very difficult to understand that at first, but as I began to unfold in the prison system and rediscover myself, I realized it was part of my path and that it wasn't something that I should shun or be ashamed of or run from. And that actually it is helping me become even better. So, and then I was able to spread that to other people in the prison system and help them, get more into themselves and understand themselves.
Well, that's incredibly rewarding. So, and you just need to have it. And sometimes I don't know, I guess I watch TV shows and I see people in really challenging situations. And I always imagine like, I would just, I would just meditate. Like I would just have to try to
Yeah.
meditate to get myself through that. And I think the only way I could get to meditation is through the practice of yoga, the physical yoga,
Absolutely.
right? So the asanas
Yeah.
and the pranayama
Yeah.
and you mentioned bhakti, and so for me that's also the devotional chanting, the
Yeah.
mantra, the chanting of mantras, and we've had a number of
Hmm.
people talk about that on the show as well. That has really helped me get to meditation.
Oh yeah.
So wow, so you had to have been so angry, certainly scared, and I really, I mean, I'm so glad that you wanted to come on and talk about this because this is huge advocacy of how the practice of yoga can help under dire circumstances that you were under. And I'm so deeply sorry that you've gone through this. But I really do think that you've grasped a silver lining. You've created something really positive from this situation. So let's talk about a little bit about I don't know what it might have been like in those early days, and finding your stability with the practice, because it certainly wasn't a peaceful environment to just be, you know, namaste.
Right. Right.
So what was
Well,
that? What was that like?
luckily, I was in like pretty much the lowest level of the prison system, which
Okay.
was a camp. There were no fences at the camp. You could you could walk off of the compound. You would get in trouble, but you could walk off if you so desired. There were guys that even had jobs off the campus, So it really wasn't that intense of an environment. But what it was that you had people that had worked their way down from higher prison levels. Um, and there's this whole point system and so on and so forth. So it just became um like I was I you know I started out in a really rough prison in the Midwest because that's where the whole case was in Kansas. And once I worked my way back over to the East Coast, um, and then I got into the Bureau of Prisons, the BOP, I felt a little more settled. And like one of my first few days there, I was walking around and I saw some guys doing yoga, or what I thought was yoga, early in the morning on Saturday. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do.
That's
So
great.
I went over there, and it was an older East Indian Hindu man that was teaching, and he was a cardiologist, and he had ended up in the prison system for something so silly. Um, but he was like, if I remember correctly, he was one of the top 5 open heart surgeons in the country, and he was a cardiologist, and he had written all these peer reviews and so on and so forth. And here he was teaching yoga, and he was basing his teachings off of what he remembered as a child in India with his father and mother doing yoga.
Incredible.
So yeah, so he
I
just
mean, like,
passed that on.
right. It's almost like you were supposed to meet him. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying? I mean,
absolutely.
when you look at that, I mean, right.
Yeah, so
So you
he
became
kind of
friends with him. So you said, "Hey,
yeah.
I want to, I'd like to participate in your class."
Yep. I asked him, what can I want to, get down with yoga. Do I have to wait to get access to yoga mats? Because, everything in prison is, you kind of got to wait and take it, wait your turn, so
Wow.
to speak. And he was like, no, we have plenty of mats. Um, we're here Saturday mornings, and there were a few other, like maybe one other day. Um, and I was there like clockwork every week, and I just saw
So great.
it was my only outlet to not be there.
Yeah.
And he saw my passion for yoga. He saw my range of motion, my breathing. We would talk a little bit. I would tell him like some of my science that I had created in my mind about yoga and so on and so forth.
Oh,
And he
really?
was like,
I
yeah,
do want to hear
you
that
know,
too.
definitely, definitely. He basically saw my passion for it, and he said, "Hey, if you want, we can do this more." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So, you know, we started doing it like 4 days a week. We built up to about 4 days a week, and you know, some sessions we did where we were only holding the asanas for maybe 30 seconds. Then there was one day out of the week where we were holding poses for 4 minutes. That was really
Wow,
intense.
that's progressive.
Yeah,
How many other people
that
were practicing with you at that point?
I'd easily say about so the camp, the total amount of people in these camps was like 230 people, and I'd say probably any given time 5 to 10 of us were
All
doing
right.
yoga consistently. Um, And you had some guys that came from other prisons with yoga. You had a whole nother crew of guys where one of the personal trainers was also a yogi, and he was the leader of their yoga crew.
That's great.
Um,
That's incredible to hear.
so ultimately, I uh, I ended up transferring from that prison, and I committed everything to memory that he taught me. So when I got to this new prison, it just so happened to be the place where Wesley Snipes was, and so I ended up inheriting pretty much Wesley's yoga students and his mats and his locker and his
Wow.
combination lock and everything. And I started teaching what I remembered from the guy who taught at the other place. And then next thing I know, I guess I was my teaching. Wesley was just kind of there doing it as part of exercise and killing time and so, not that he wasn't taking it seriously. I'm sure he was taking it seriously, but I was in this program called RDAP, Residential Drug Assistance Program, something like that.
Okay.
And it was just this whole self-development program, really good. It helps you deal with your thinking and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I became like the yoga element to the health and wellness club. And so then it just caught on. People just started coming, people
Wow.
in the program, people outside of the program. The camp administrator, she liked it because she didn't like all the weightlifting and all that.
Mm.
So she wanted us to do more docile things.
Well, right,
And
and you can still develop a lot of strength. I mean,
oh yeah,
right. I mean, I certainly know it. I've been a little lax on my push-ups lately. On my up dog to the down dog to up dog.
right,
I'm little.
right.
We have the long sleeves on today. Um, but I saw your video, and yeah, I mean, it's what a beautiful way. Okay, so this is great. I mean, so people they're just feeling you as a teacher. I mean, what's going on? How are they finding you? What is and that must have felt so rewarding.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So I had guys that were studying to be personal trainers in there. So they had read that yoga helped with your workout. So they wanted to take this one person, Shane, who's actually in the documentary. He wanted to take yoga to kind of learn how to incorporate it into his workout.
Yeah.
And so now it's interesting when you see Shane's workout, a lot of it has incorporated the yoga that I taught him. And he actually left that prison, went to another prison before he went home, and he started teaching yoga at the other prison from what I taught him.
Brilliant.
There was another guy, Peter Roman. He was actually in my group in that program I took. He had a back issue because he used to race cars, and I think he got into a really bad car accident and like tweaked his L1 or something like that. And the beds in the prison system are very unforgiving, so it's hard to get a good night's sleep.
Oh, yeah.
So he came to me one day and he was like, "Yo, do you think yoga will help my back?" I was like, "Absolutely, especially with the sleeping situation that we're dealing with." Um, so he came, he started doing yoga with me. He probably was my most consistent student for like over a year,
Well, let's
you
give a
know?
little tip. Let's give a few tips here. So, can you tell? Can you? How did you guide him? Because I mean, had he ever? How was his flexibility, for example? Because it would be my instinct if somebody's having a back problem, you'd want to maybe get them into a child's pose, either with the
Yes.
arms extended or to the
Hmm.
back. I know it helps my lower back problems. Would be one
Definitely.
of the ones, as well as cat cow. So I mean, but hey, some people, it's not that comfortable for them to be on their knees or,
Right.
down on the ground like that. So what did you do? I'm going to ask that
Um,
specific.
with people like Peter, and there was one other person, they had like severe back issues. I would I would look at the back like this. Like if this is your back, I wanted to expand the range of motion so that it would be
Yeah.
like this, and then, sideways, so on and so forth. Twisting. So like if you
That's
could just
true.
imagine you're twisting or something. So like
Right.
sage twist. Sage twist was a really, really good pose for those guys
Okay.
who
Wait,
had
what did you call it? What
lower
kind of
back issues.
twist? What kind of twist did you call it?
Sage sage twist.
Sage
It may be
twist.
called something else. I don't
I
know.
don't
I
know.
call it. I've seen it called sage twist,
Is it on your
and
hands on on the shoulders like that?
no, it's actually you're sitting down. You cross one. Your legs are laying out flat. You're sitting up.
Mm-hmm.
You cross your right leg over. Then you lock your left elbow into your right knee.
Oh, yeah.
And you extend,
Yeah.
and then you kind of look back, and then you look up,
Yes.
and man, you would just hear
Yeah.
everybody, you know, everybody would just crack, and they would just feel so good afterwards.
That's amazing. Self adjustment.
Yes, yes, literally. And that was the thing too. Like, we kind of had to learn and figure out how to stay healthy on our own with
Yes.
what limited resources we had. So there were supplements on commissary. They weren't the greatest, but you could kind of mix some things and get something decent in your body. The food wasn't that great either, but hey, it's prison. What do you expect? Um, but with the mixture of the proper fitness, the proper supplements, and the okay diet, we got through. And
Yeah,
most of it,
amazing.
it says thought is the cause of it all. Most of it was just rearranging our way of thinking and perceiving ourselves, our reality, where we were, um, and projecting a positive future and a positive outcome for ourselves upon reentry back into society. And that's really important because a lot of guys have anxiety in prison because it's kind of easy to do the time, but it's not easy to think about what you're gonna do when you get out.
Oh yeah, I can only
You
imagine.
know.
Okay, so how did you how did you prepare? I mean, you yourself had to go through it. There were other people that would be returning that I assume had been there longer than you and in a more dire circumstances, i.e., probably they had done far worse things. So
Absolutely, yeah.
how did you guide them? I mean, I understand you're saying, you put your head, your fingers to the head, the thoughts. And you said you used the term science when you were talking with your teacher, the heart surgeon. The
Hmm.
So what was it? What were you figuring out at this point? And how can that
Um,
inform all of us? Whether, I mean, because some people feel like they're in a prison in jobs, relationships. I mean,
yeah,
the pandemic, I mean, we throw that
yeah.
term around, but
Hmm.
I think that I think that you can share some wisdom for all of us under all kinds of different circumstances.
Absolutely. So you heard me say thought is the cause of it all. And basically, what that means is, and it's kind of self-explanatory, but the way you think dictates the outcome of the event, the circumstance, the situation, the issue, your life in general. So if you think clear thoughts, clean thoughts, and it's something you have to train yourself to do because you have to learn how to turn your mind off at times and so on and so forth. But um, I think that guys had little micro situations in the prison system that they were able to test this concept on.
Okay.
And, you know, oh, I want to make sure my release date is at the right time. And, I'm doing everything right to get the right release date and the right amount of halfway house time and all these things. And, they would think positive and do the right things, everything necessary to make that manifest properly, and it would. You know, um, some guys had a goal of I want to get my bench press to 235 from 185. And they would use their mind to literally pick up those weights and figure out their form, their technique, and so on and so forth. And you talk to them, or I'd see guys talking to them as they were growing and accelerating with their workout, and they would go, "Yo, you went from 185 to 235. How'd you do that?" And they go, "Believe it or not, yoga helped me a lot with that."
That is
And
so great.
um, I had a music teacher in there. He was serving 15 years. Poor guy. This guy
Yeah, yeah.
is an incredible songwriter.
Oh,
He taught me how to play guitar. He taught me how to write on guitar. He taught me like just everything, all the secrets. And he and I had this ongoing ping pong uh, rivalry that was just nonstop for years. We were just at war playing ping pong. And one time he hit the ball and it I wasn't supposed to do this, hit this ball and return it back. And I like did a split, caught the ball with the paddle, hit it back, it hit the table, and I got the point. And I said, and he always used to say, yoga doesn't work. Yoga doesn't work. And right at that point, I said, yeah, yoga works. Everybody was laughing. It was hilarious. But I'm just saying, like, there were so many different ways that we could kind of apply our thinking, you know?
It's
Um,
true. It's the yoga of ping pong. But I do think I've always said that even in my earliest days, because I've been practicing for so long, and I used to try to encourage people that people would tease me. Oh, you're going to yogurt class. I remember this one friend of
right.
mine would tease me,
Yeah.
and but I would just say, but you should. It applies to everything. The
Mm-hmm.
things we learn applies to everything. How you're walking down the street, or maybe how you're skiing.
Yes,
Right. So
absolutely.
I had never thought about ping pong, but yet I know, because I think it's just really about being beautifully aligned. And I'll just remind people listening that I think that we go through the physical challenges of yoga, the postures. Holding for 4 minutes is a long time, like you
Oh,
described.
yeah.
But I think that, for me, it was really revelatory when it was pointed out to me, find the meditation in the pose.
Mm,
Right?
oh, so when you say that, it so all right. One of the things that I told the man that taught me yoga, he was like, "What is it? Why do you love yoga so much? What is it? What like I see your connection to it is very different than everybody else's. What is it for you?" And I said, I figured something out. Um, when we're holding those poses for a minute and 2 minutes and so on and so forth, after a while, I get so deep into my breathing, and I'm so in that pose that I just find a deep sense of peace. And so I called it finding the peace in the pose.
Mm.
And it wasn't the easiest thing to find, because sometimes you had to do the pose over and over and over again for weeks and weeks until
Right.
the range of motion opened up and the pain subsided so that you could relax and then find that deep peace in it where you could just kind of be in a very, challenging pose or position for, 4 minutes. And it was peaceful. That was just the best way I could describe it. It was peaceful.
Right? Exactly. And how
Yeah,
how it can be very different every day. I mean, from one day to the next, right?
absolutely.
How and that's one of the things that's kind of beautiful as far as when you were in there, it was something to look forward to for you and all that joined you.
Absolutely.
So I would love to us to this to be a platform for some thoughts about how I mean, you obviously were in the system. I think it's certainly no secret that prison reform is desperately needed in this country.
Yeah.
It's just tragic. I mean, I'm to see different practices. I mean, would you like to make some statements? Just even like, let's just say, in terms of making this available to people, how something like this can be made available to people, for, we use the word transformation here a lot, how it can be transformative. So I invite you to share your thoughts on that.
Well, definitely yoga. It can transform your prison experience, um, by helping you understand that you are not the body, and you're not even the soul. You're the spirit. You're the part. You're that spark of divinity that is the supreme intelligence. And learn to connect with that part of yourself. Um, Trust that your body, the movement that you practice in yoga, can help you go inward and find yourself within. It's not easily understood. It's one of those things you kind of just have to do. If it seems as though there's no outlet in prison for yoga, uh, there's magazines. Men's Health. There's yoga magazines floating around. There's
Oh, that's
yoga
great.
books floating around.
Okay.
Pick them up and just start by what you're seeing.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
I mean, technically, you don't even really need a mat. I mean, I use a towel sometimes,
how?
depending on
Yeah,
where you are. I mean, I think there's something that feels kind of good to have this is my space. I'm going to work on my space. Not to
exactly.
mention you're on the ground, but hey,
Right.
I've certainly practiced yoga in the grass before, or the sand. So,
Absolutely. Yes.
right? No, it's really true. So, all right. Well, thank goodness that you referenced your practice. It sounds like you really knew that it was something that was going to help get you through, and then but then it snowballed. You met
Oh,
others,
yeah.
others joined you. How rewarding! I mean, I'm sure really lasting relationships. I
Yes.
mean, you helped a lot of people that were, I'd say, really suffering body, mind, spirit,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so tell me what the transition was like once you were able to leave.
No fear. No
Okay.
fear. Um, I, you know, honestly, the only, if there was any level of fear when I left, it was that I had all the access to doing yoga while I was there. And as soon as I got to the halfway house and into the real world, it was a fight to get back to being able to do yoga
Hmm.
consistently.
Is
Um,
that based on time, space?
Everything, time, space, life circumstances. Yes, it was
Yeah.
just like it was a challenge, but I found it. I found my way back, and I actually switched types of yoga. I went from hatha to kundalini. So now my practice is predominantly kundalini
Oh,
yoga.
Satnam.
Um,
Yes.
Satnam, yeah. And you know, I took it step by step, day by day. I didn't. One of the drug treatment specialists in the program, you know, left us with this one saying. It was you know, don't be a sprinter, be a marathon runner. You know,
Mm.
meaning be in it for the long haul. That way, you're not rushing to try to make $1 million tomorrow. You're not rushing to get the house or the car and to get back on your feet and to live the life that you once lived. You know, take your time, because if you build your foundation properly, then once you get it all back, you will keep it, because you know, number one, how you got it. You got it the right way, and um, it's more a part of who you are now.
Wow. I love that. I mean, that is so applicable in so many things. I mean, it's almost like you could use a tree analogy. If a tree grows up too tall too quickly, all spindly, it can get blown
Yeah,
over versus a strong root system.
exactly.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of great because we obviously one of the phrases we use in yoga is to root,
Yeah.
to anchor and root down.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I really want to emphasize, and I'll allow you to elaborate in your experience of it, but yoga is not just the postures. So anybody that's interested in experimenting with it, there's so many different ways to do it. We've had other speakers on that talk about just the yoga of mantra. I mean, if you just
Yes,
did nothing but have those mantras in your mind, how that is a form of connection, the union, right? That we spoke about.
it really is. I mean, like, just take Satnam. Truth is my name.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're just chanting that over and over and over again. Um, how truth becomes who you are. It becomes your identity, and you start to disassociate with your appellation, the name your parents gave you, even
Mm.
though that's the understanding of who you are on the earth plane and amongst your peers and so on and so forth. It's a sheath. The body is a sheath. It's all just covering up something more intimate and special, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, you know, the chanting definitely helps to bring you deeper within, along with the breathing. And it helps you connect, so to speak. So don't be afraid of Kundalini yoga or the chanting or the mantra or anything like that. It's all there for your benefit.
Absolutely, and there's lots of different resources to learn about it as well. And I know when I first went to Kundalini yoga, I've perhaps said this in other interviews. I loved that it's referred to as the yoga of awareness, and I love that it brought
Mm-hmm.
you to some specifics about I am doing this posture because it affects this part of my body internally.
Yeah.
Like this is good for your
Mm-hmm.
liver and things like that. So I thought that was fascinating. I guess maybe I was mostly doing my physical practices just trying to it was more muscular,
Right.
skeletal and not thinking about the
Mm-hmm.
organs.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Lungs, brain. I mean, it's fascinating. Awareness,
it's
right?
it's interesting too because you know, I grew up directly around the corner from the first Gurdwara that Yogi Bhajan started in the United States here. It was in LA. So I grew up on Wooster Street, and right on Proof was the Gurdwara that Yogi Bhajan started. And I remember as a child seeing him and all the Sikhs that lived on that street. So when I got reintroduced back into Kundalini yoga as a grown man, I started to just remember all this stuff about my childhood and going around the corner and talking to the Sikhs and asking them, why do you carry that knife? Why do you wear all white?
Oh
You
my
know,
God.
and
That
and
is
you know,
so incredible. I love it. That little
so it
knife. I forgot about the little knife. It's been so long since we've
yeah,
gone to classes, that we
yeah.
don't see anybody. Shall we tell people real quickly what we're talking about there? The knife is
Um,
symbolic of, help me out.
I forgot
Okay,
myself.
so I'm just going to do my best, and people can, we'll flesh this out in the comments
Okay,
on this show. But I think that it is symbolic of battles that they had to wage, in terms, in support and in for their truth, for the fight for
right.
their truth and their religion. So I think it's just a little teeny 4-inch sword that's symbolic,
Mm-hmm.
like an ornament, really, not an actual sword that's put into use. Just
Right,
so you know. But I love it. And you mentioned LA before, and I was talking about my yoga studio, and that was Yoga West,
right,
which is where
right.
Yogi Bhajan used to teach. So,
Mm-hmm.
what do you have a spiritual name?
I don't. I need to actually go through and get certified in Kundalini yoga so I can get some kind of a name or what have you. But
Well, it's a great experience, and I look forward to talking to you offline a little bit more about that. So you're back in the real world, and your practice has evolved, and we've got this documentary coming out. It tells a little bit more about it's at the festivals at this point, correct?
yep.
It's a
So right
short.
now it's a short. It's just under 10 minutes. It captures a time period in my life right after my father passed away. Um, it's interesting because it the way that it all came together was Candace
The
and
director.
I
The director.
both had yeah, she's the director of Nkosi Eclipse, and she's done a couple of other really good documentaries as well. She and I had a mutual friend. We didn't know each other, but she went to some sort of an event for aspiring people that do documentaries, and she met a friend of mine who was also doing a documentary. And Candace told this young lady, she said, I'm thinking my next documentary is going to be on prison yoga. And the girl, her name is Tamara. She goes, Oh my God, that's amazing. I have a really good friend who just came home from prison, and he taught yoga in the prison
It's
system. And she's
incredible.
like, "Oh my God, I gotta know him," you know. So she hooked us up. We met, and within months we started filming, and it just the rest is history, I guess. It just was such an amazing experience with Candace that and to watch the slow unfolding of the documentary as it's getting picked up in festivals and you know interviews and distributors are picking it up and all this stuff is happening. It's surreal. It's like what? Like I can't believe I'm like being called to do interviews and
Here
stuff.
you are, and here you are
Yeah.
on Truth Be Told Transformation. Well, listen, here's to more of that, and keep your eyes peeled for Nkosi ascending. Sorry,
Eclipse.
why do I
Eclipse.
want to say ascending? I think I've had too much 5D conversation with other
Right,
interviews.
right.
Why eclipsed? Can you tell me why eclipsed? Tell me what your understanding is of that.
um I never actually asked Candace why Nkosi eclipse, but if I had to just kind of go with what I think it might be, Nkosi means king or ruler in Swahili. It also is in Ghanaian tree. It means something. But and then I guess the way Candace looked at it was here I was on my path, radiating light, just walking through life. And then all of a sudden, my light got eclipsed
Mm,
temporarily,
yeah,
by going into the prison system. And then the moon or whatever was blocking the light moved out of the way,
yeah.
and now I'm back again, radiating my light. So I
That is a
think that's
great.
what,
That
yeah, I think
works.
that's what it has to do with.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Thank you so much for talking to us today. I've gotten so much out of our conversation, and I myself have not yet seen your documentary, so I will keep my eyes peeled for that, and I hope to keep in touch and share stories and favorite Kundalini yoga meditations. Satnam.
Definitely.
All right.
Satnam,
Stay
thank you for
well.
having me.
All right.
You
Well,
too.
come and visit us in LA sometime.
I
Thanks
will
again.
definitely.
And thanks for
Thank you.
everybody for listening to Tooth Retold Transformation. Bonnie Burkert here. It's really been a pleasure. And don't forget, we have new episodes at 3 o'clock on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Robert Hensley has the Minuteman Report on Mondays. I have a new episode every Wednesday. And Tony Sweet, our fearless leader, every Friday live, 3 p.m. Pacific. Until the next time, namaste, everybody. Be well.